I watched my husband laugh with his mistress from the table right next to theirs, while her own husband sat beside me, quietly stirring his drink. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. It still feels unreal, even now. The soft light of the restaurant, the quiet music, the clinking of glasses, and right there, just a few feet away, my husband, Evan Hart, smiling at another woman like she was his whole world. Her name was Sierra, blonde, polished, with a laugh that sounded like something rehearsed. They looked like a perfect couple, the kind you'd see in an ad for happiness. Except they were both married, and sitting beside me was her husband, Cole. I'm Lena, 34 years old, interior designer. I used to believe Evan and I had a strong marriage. We met in college, built a small life together in North Carolina, bought a cozy house, and even planned to start a family. But lately something changed. He started working late, wearing cologne he never used before, guarding his phone like it held national secrets. I felt something slipping away, something I couldn't name yet. The night I found the hotel booking on his laptop, my whole body went cold. A romantic package, 2 guests. Her name was right there, Sierra Latham. My hands shook, but I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen, feeling my world tilt. I looked her up, and that's how I found out she was married too. To Cole. I could have screamed, confronted Evan, thrown him out. But I didn't. Instead, I called Cole. I told him everything. He was quiet at first, then he thanked me for telling the truth. We met at a coffee shop a few days later. He looked broken but calm, like someone who'd already suspected it. We sat there for an hour, talking about what our spouses had done. By the time we left, we had a plan. When I learned they had a dinner planned at the Willow, the same restaurant Evan once took me to for our anniversary, I knew what I wanted to do. I booked the table right next to theirs. Cole agreed to come with me. That night, I wore the dress Evan said was his favorite, not for him, but for me. Cole wore a suit and said very little. We walked in hand, and sat down. When Evan and Sierra entered, laughing and glowing under the soft lights, they froze. Evan's smile fell. Sierra went pale. I met her eyes and smiled. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air was thick, heavy, electric. Cole quietly stirred his drink, never taking his eyes off them. I didn't need to scream or cry. They already knew we knew. And that silence, that awful, perfect silence, was louder than any revenge I could have planned. Before everything fell apart, my life looked perfect from the outside. We had a lovely home in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where people waved while walking their dogs and the mail always arrived on time. Evan and I had a routine. Coffee together in the mornings, shared dinners, lazy Sundays spent watching old movies. For years, it felt simple and safe. I thought that was happiness. But looking back, I can see the cracks that were forming, little things that didn't make sense at first. Evan started working late more often, saying his firm had new clients and longer deadlines. I believed him because he said it so casually, with that familiar smile that used to make me feel secure. But the smile stopped reaching his eyes. He began to take better care of himself too, almost suddenly. He joined a gym, bought new clothes, and wore cologne that I hadn't picked out. I remember standing in our bedroom one morning, watching him adjust his tie. He smelled different, looked different, and when I asked about the cologne, he just said, "A client gifted it." His tone made it sound like a small thing, not worth discussing. But it stuck with me. There were nights when I waited for him, the dinner going cold while I sat at the kitchen counter pretending to scroll through design ideas for work. He'd text, running late, or grabbing a drink with the guys. When he came home, he'd kiss my forehead, not my lips, and go straight to the shower. I told myself it was stress, that he was tired, that maybe I was imagining. It's strange how love can make you blind on purpose. He started guarding his phone too. Before, it used to lie on the coffee table, screen lighting up with work messages or jokes from friends. Now it was always in his pocket or face down beside him. One night, it buzzed while we were watching TV, and I caught a glimpse of a name, just a first name, short and unfamiliar. When I asked who it was, he laughed and said it was a coworker. Then he changed the subject. I tried to bring up how distant he felt, but every time I did, he made me feel foolish. "You're overthinking again," he'd say, wrapping his arms around me for just long enough to silence me. I wanted to believe him so badly that I convinced myself the problem was me, that maybe I wasn't enough, maybe I was the one drifting. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Love isn't supposed to feel like waiting for someone who's already left the room. The laughter between us grew thinner, the silence heavier. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of his phone lighting up on the nightstand. Each small lie settled between us, invisible but sharp, until our home, once so warm, started to feel like a stranger's house. It happened on a Thursday night, one of those evenings when the air feels too still and even silence sounds suspicious. Evan had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he took a shower. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. I trusted him, or at least I used to. But something inside me whispered to check, just once, to prove myself wrong. The screen glowed with an open email tab. My eyes caught the subject line, reservation confirmation. I clicked before I could stop myself. It was from a luxury hotel 2 towns over, the kind we could never justify staying in. The details were clear. 2 guests, 1 king suite weekend stay. And there it was, her name Sierra Latham. The words hit harder than a scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. My body just went still, like someone had unplugged me from my own. My first thought wasn't even about love or heartbreak. It was about the carefulness of it all. The reservation was made weeks ago, the planning neat and deliberate. He'd chosen dates when he knew I'd be working late on a client project. He'd covered every detail. I sat at the counter staring at the screen, the cursor blinking like it was mocking me. The email had attachments, dinner arrangements, spa bookings, and a note in Evan's tone. Can't wait for this weekend. It was strange seeing his words written for someone else, words that used to be mine. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. My heart didn't race. It just thudded slowly, heavily. I told myself to breathe, that I needed to think. If I confronted him now, he'd lie, twist it, make me doubt what I saw. No, I needed to know more. I opened the laptop again, this time searching her name. Sierra Latham. The search results came up fast. Pictures, profiles, a smiling face beside a man with strong shoulders and kind eyes. The caption on one photo read, "Weekend with my favorite person, Cole." My stomach turned. She wasn't single. She had a husband. Click after click, I pieced together her life. A small construction business in town, wedding photos, a house near the lake. They looked happy, the kind of couple people envy without knowing the truth. I stared at the photo of Cole for a long time, wondering if he knew. Wondering if he sat at his kitchen table, feeling the same coldness in his chest that I did. When Evan came out of the shower, humming like nothing had changed, I smiled at him. I even asked about dinner. My voice sounded calm, almost too calm. Inside, though, everything had shifted. I wasn't his blind, trusting wife anymore. That night, as he kissed me goodnight, I kept seeing Sierra's name glowing on that screen. I knew I couldn't unsee it. I also knew I wasn't the only one he'd betrayed. I found his number on the company website. Cole Latham, contractor, Lakeview Builds. His photo was there too, the same man from Sierra's pictures, smiling beside unfinished home. I stared at the number for a long time before dialing. My hand shook as the phone rang. When he answered, his voice was deep, steady, almost cautious. I introduced myself as an interior designer looking to collaborate on a project. It was a lie, but it got me through the door. We met at a small cafe near the water. He was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with a black coffee untouched in front of him. Up close, he looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from lack of sleep, but the kind that comes from knowing something you wish you didn't. His eyes met mine, and for a second, neither of us spoke. It was like we both knew why we were really there. I slid into the seat across from him and pretended to talk about design work. He nodded politely, playing along. Finally, I stopped pretending. I told him my name, my husband's name, and then hers. His face changed. He didn't move, didn't speak, but his jaw tightened. The silence between us said everything. I apologized for coming to him like this, but I needed him to know. He took a slow breath and leaned back in his chair. I had a feeling, he said quietly. She's been different for months. I just didn't have proof. His calmness surprised me. I expected anger, maybe denial, but instead, he looked like someone who'd already grieved and was just waiting for confirmation. We sat there for over an hour, 2 strangers picking through the pieces of our broken life. I told him about the reservation, the emails, the names. He told me about her excuses, business meetings, yoga classes, late returns. Every story lined up too perfectly. The betrayal was almost clinical in its precision. When I finally asked what he wanted to do, he shook his head. I don't know, he said. What do you want? I looked out the window, watching the light move across the lake. I want them to see us, I said. Not in some dramatic scene or screaming match. Just see us, sitting there, knowing we know. The idea came out of me like it had been waiting. They've been meeting in restaurants. We'll be there too, right beside them. Cole stared at me for a long moment. You want to watch them? I want them to watch us, I said softly. He was quiet again, thinking. There was a small twitch in his jaw, like he was weighing pride against pain. Finally, he nodded. If we're doing this, he said, we do it once. No yelling, no scenes, just truth. We agreed to meet again, to plan. As I walked away from that cafe, my reflection in the glass looked like someone I didn't recognize. Calm, sharp, and certain. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel powerless. I found the confirmation by chance, another forwarded message tucked inside Evan's inbox. A dinner reservation at the Willow, the same place where he once told me he'd never loved anyone the way he loved me. I read the details twice to be sure. His name, her name, a Friday night at 7, a private corner table, champagne on arrival. The choice stung more than the affair itself. He'd chosen our place, the one that still smelled like our anniversaries. I printed the email and folded it into my planner, as if it were a business note. My hands didn't shake this time. I'd already made peace with the truth. Now it was about control. I called the restaurant, my voice steady. "I'd like to book a table," I said, next to the one reserved for Evan Hart. The hostess didn't question it, just asked for a name. I gave her Cole's. The reservation was set within minutes. The plan took shape quietly, piece by piece. I called Cole that evening and told him. He didn't sound surprised, only asked, "You're sure about this?" I told him I'd never been more certain. He agreed without hesitation. Over the next few days, I arranged everything down to the smallest detail. I asked the hostess to serve the same wine Evan had ordered, a vintage red we used to share on special occasions. I requested the same entree, the same dessert, even the same flowers that always sat on our table back when things were good, pale lilies, his supposed favorite. It wasn't about romance anymore, it was about symmetry. I wanted them to see their reflection, twisted and exposed under candlelight. I found the perfect dress too, elegant but understated, a deep emerald color that made my eyes look sharper. Cole said he'd wear a simple suit. "We don't need to look angry," he told me, "just composed." I agreed. Our calmness would be their undoing. Every moment of planning carried a strange stillness, almost peaceful. There was no screaming, no bitterness, just quiet precision. I mapped out the timing, the seating, the wine order, even where we'd park. It wasn't revenge for the sake of cruelty. It was truth arranged like a stage play. The night before, I walked past the mirror in our hallway and paused. Evan's jacket still hung there, the one he wore on those work dinners. I almost reached for it, then stopped. It could stay. Let him walk out with the same clothes he wore when he lied to me. By the time Friday came, everything was ready. Cole would meet me outside the restaurant at 6:55. The thought of it, sitting just a few feet away from the two people who had taken so much from us, should have made me nervous. Instead, it felt like balance. The story they built in the shadows was about to meet the light, and I'd make sure they saw every second of it. The evening air was cool and still, the kind that carries every sound, heels against pavement, the faint hum of traffic, a door closing somewhere far off. I arrived at the Willow right on time, my heart steady, but my thoughts sharp. The emerald dress fit perfectly, smooth and simple. I hadn't worn perfume. I wanted no trace of artifice, nothing that could be mistaken for an attempt to impress. Cole was already waiting by the entrance, hands in his pockets, a quiet strength about him. We exchanged a small nod, no words needed. Inside, the restaurant glowed with soft golden light. Crystal glasses caught reflections like tiny flames. The hostess led us to our table, exactly as planned, close enough to theirs that I could hear the murmur of laughter once they arrived. I sat down, smoothing the napkin across my lap, pretending to study the menu even though I knew every detail of what would be ordered that night. Cole ordered wine, the same label that Evan had chosen. We didn't toast. We didn't need to. When the door opened again, I felt it before I saw them, that careless kind of laughter people have when they think they're safe. Evan walked in first, his hand resting easily on Sierra's back. She looked polished, her blonde hair tied up, a faint shimmer of perfume trailing behind her. For a second, I almost couldn't breathe. They were so casual, so at ease, completely unaware. Then Sierra's gaze shifted, landing on me. The change was instant. Her smile faltered, her shoulders stiffened. Evan followed her line of sight, his face drained of color. The laughter stopped. I didn't flinch. I simply met his eyes, calm and cold, and then turned my attention to Sierra. She froze mid-step, her lips parting as if to say something, but nothing came out. Cole didn't move either. He sat back, one hand around his glass, his expression unreadable. The waiter approached, oblivious to the tension, setting down our wine. I lifted my glass, tilting it toward them in a silent greeting. Sierra blinked hard, a faint tremor in her hand as she adjusted her purse. Evan tried to speak, but his voice caught, too soft to carry. The air around us tightened. Every sound in the restaurant, clinking cutlery, soft piano notes, felt magnified. I took a slow sip, my eyes never leaving there. There was no need for confrontation. The silence did the work for us. It said everything words couldn't, we know. They stood there for a few seconds that stretched endlessly, trapped between fight and flight. Sierra looked down first, breaking the stare, while Evan's jaw clenched, his hand dropping from her arm. Cole exhaled quietly beside me, not relief, not triumph, just release. I set my glass down, perfectly still, and smiled, small, controlled, unshaken. In that quiet moment, I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. The lies that had lived so comfortably in the dark were now sitting under soft candlelight, exposed for what they were. Evan's voice broke the silence first, low and trembling, a sound caught somewhere between guilt and panic. "Lena, this isn't." He stopped, his words tangled before they could form. His hand hovered over the chair beside him, but he didn't sit. Sierra's eyes darted between us, her breath quick and uneven. The color had drained from her face, and when she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "We didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered, clutching her purse as if it could shield her. Cole leaned back, crossing his arms. His calmness was a wall, solid and impenetrable. "You meant every part of it," he said quietly, his tone steady but cutting. Sierra flinched, tears spilling fast, streaking the foundation on her cheeks. She reached toward him, but he didn't move. The distance between them felt wider than the whole room. Evan tried again, his words stumbling over themselves. "It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking." His voice wavered like a man caught in his own trap. I watched him, my expression unreadable. The same mouth that once promised forever now spilled half-truths out of desperation. I didn't interrupt until he ran out of excuses. When I finally spoke, my tone was calm, almost too calm. "You weren't thinking," I said softly, "for months." He froze. I kept my eyes on him, my voice steady. "Every night you said you were at the office, I knew where you really were. Every late meeting, every client dinner. Every time you came home smelling like a stranger." The words hung between us like sharp glass. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it again. His silence was more revealing than anything he could have said. Around us, the soft sounds of dinner carried on. Silverware clinking, a laugh from another table, but it all blurred into a faint hum. Sierra's tears turned into quiet sobs. "Cole, please," she said, her voice trembling. "It wasn't what you think." Cole didn't even look at her. He took a slow sip of wine, his expression unreadable, as if her voice no longer reached him. Evan tried to move closer to me, his hand brushing the table, but I shifted slightly back. "Don't," I said simply. The single word landed heavier than any scream. "You made your choices. All I did was watch." He blinked, confusion flickering across his face. He hadn't expected calm, only chaos. Sierra stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor, tears streaking down. She muttered something that dissolved into a sob and hurried out of the restaurant, nearly tripping as she pushed through the door. Evan hesitated for a heartbeat, torn between pride and panic, then followed her, his steps clumsy, his face ashen. When the door closed behind them, silence returned, heavy and clean. Cole exhaled slowly, setting his glass down. I didn't say anything. We sat there, two people surrounded by the wreckage of what others had broken, the candle flickering between us like a quiet victory. The morning after that night felt strangely quiet, like the world had taken a breath and was waiting to see what I'd do next. Evan came home before sunrise. I heard the front door open, the hesitant footsteps down the hall. He didn't call my name right away, just stood there in the doorway, his face drawn, his shirt wrinkled. The look on his face wasn't remorse, it was fear. He started talking before I could say anything. "Lena, please. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything." The words spilled out in fragments, rehearsed and hollow. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I just looked at him, really looked at him, this man I used to know. Every apology sounded smaller the longer he talked. When he finally stopped, I said quietly, "You knew exactly what you were doing. That's not a mistake." His shoulders sagged. For a second, I thought he might cry, but he didn't. He just stood there, waiting for forgiveness that wasn't coming. I walked past him, picked up the overnight bag I'd already packed, and left. My sister's house smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner, familiar and safe. She didn't ask for details, just opened the guest room door and said, "Stay as long as you need." That first night, I lay awake listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, my mind replaying every moment at the restaurant, the look on his face, Sierra's tears, the silence that followed. It should have felt like closure, but it didn't. It felt like standing in the aftermath of a storm, unsure what to rebuild first. Cole called 2 days later. His voice was calm, steady, almost formal. "The papers are being filed," he said. "I'm done." There was no anger in his tone, only finality. I told him I'd left too. We didn't say much after that. Just small things, enough to let each other know we were still standing. Over the next week, Evan kept reaching out. Messages, calls, long emails filled with half-promises and explanations. It didn't mean anything, he kept writing, as if that made it better. I never replied. I read each one once and deleted it. I realized he wasn't sorry for betraying me. He was sorry for being caught. In between the silence, I began to feel something unexpected, strength. Not the loud kind, not the kind that needs to prove anything, but quiet certainty. I started working again, focusing on small design projects for friends, filling my days with color and space instead of memories. Cole texted me once more, a simple message. "You handled it with grace." I stared at it for a long time before replying. We both did what we had to. Every morning after that, I woke up a little lighter. I wasn't the same person who sat in that restaurant waiting for the truth to hurt. I wasn't waiting anymore. The damage was done, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like the story belonged to me. The therapist's office smelled faintly of lavender and old books. I sat on the couch, hands folded in my lap, unsure where to start. The woman across from me, Dr. Warren, waited patiently, her notebook open but untouched. When I finally spoke, the words came out small. "I thought we were happy," I said. "But I think I stopped being happy long before he cheated." She didn't interrupt. She just nodded, and something about that quiet understanding made it easier to keep talking. Week after week, the truth unfolded slowly. I'd spent years shrinking myself to keep peace, saying yes when I wanted to say no, excusing indifference because I was afraid of being alone. Evan's betrayal wasn't the first wound. It was the last one I was willing to ignore. I realized I'd built our marriage around keeping him comfortable, even when it made me disappear. Dr. Warren asked me once, "When did you stop expecting more?" I didn't have an answer. Maybe it happened in the small moments, when he stopped asking about my day, when I stopped correcting him after he interrupted me, when I laughed at jokes that made me feel invisible. I let quiet disappointment replace real connection, thinking that was normal. It wasn't. I began rebuilding my business, one project at a time. The first job I took after everything ended was a small cafe renovation. The owner told me to make it warm, welcoming, a place people wanted to stay. I poured myself into it. The work became therapy of its own. Every color I chose, every texture, every piece of light felt like reclaiming space I had once given away. Cole called once a month or so. We didn't talk about them, not anymore. It was never emotional, never awkward, just brief updates. He mentioned finishing the divorce process and focusing on work. I told him about my new clients, the small victories, the quiet evenings that didn't hurt anymore. There was comfort in that simplicity. Two people who'd survived the same fire, now standing in the ashes, breathing clean air again. Some nights, I'd think about how close I came to losing myself completely. It wasn't Evan who broke me. It was all the times I told myself to stay small. Therapy made me face that, made me see the parts of myself I'd traded for peace that never existed. I learned to set boundaries, with others, but mostly with myself. I stopped answering Evan's messages. I stopped explaining why I didn't owe him closure. I learned to sit in silence without feeling lonely. There were moments when I felt grief, but it wasn't for him. It was for the years I spent waiting to be chosen by someone who'd already turned away. One afternoon, while cleaning my studio, I found an old photo of us from our wedding day. I didn't tear it, didn't burn it. I just placed it in a drawer and closed it gently. It belonged to another version of me, the one who hadn't yet learned that love isn't supposed to cost you yourself. The seasons had shifted by the time the last trace of him faded from my life. Spring crept in slow, soft sunlight spilling across the windows of my new apartment. Work was steady, my studio finally full of the laughter and color I'd been missing. I no longer checked my phone for messages that never came. The quiet no longer felt empty, it felt earned. It was Cole who mentioned it first, during one of our short calls. "They're done," he said simply. "Filed for divorce last month." I didn't ask for details, but he told me anyway. Evan and Sierra had tried to make it work, but the same deceit that brought them together tore them apart. He sounded neither bitter nor triumphant, just factual, like someone reading a weather report. I thanked him, not because I cared, but because it felt like the end of a long sentence. Weeks later, I walked past the Willow after a meeting. The golden lights inside glowed just as I remembered. Without really thinking, I went in. The hostess smiled politely and asked if I had a reservation. I gave her my name this time, my own, not borrowed from someone else. She led me to a table in the corner. I paused when I realized it was the same one from that night. The room looked different now. Or maybe I did. The walls still shimmered in amber light. The soft music still floated through the air, but the weight that once lived in my chest was gone. I ordered a glass of red, the same vintage I'd lifted toward them months ago. When it arrived, I held it for a moment, letting the stem rest between my fingers. All around me, couples talked in low voices, laughter drifting over plates of food. No one stared. No one whispered. I was just another person enjoying dinner. I took a sip of wine, and for the first time in a long while, it didn't taste like memory. It tasted like beginning. The waiter asked if I was waiting for anyone. I smiled and shook my head. "Just me," I said. The words came out soft but sure. He nodded and left me alone, and I felt something settle quietly inside. Peace, maybe, or closure, though I wasn't sure they were different anymore. When I glanced out the window, the reflection staring back wasn't the woman who'd sat here watching her world collapse. This one looked steady, untouchable. The pain that once defined me had become a kind of strength, invisible but certain. I didn't need to see Evan again, didn't need an apology or an ending. He and Sierra would live with their own choices. That was punishment enough. I finished my wine, left a tip, and walked out into the cool night. The city lights shimmered against the pavement, and for the first time, I didn't look back. The thought came quietly, almost like a whisper. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's simply moving on while they stay stuck where you left them. Hey besties. Thanks for sticking with me till the end of this wild story. Imagine catching your husband at dinner with his mistress, and sitting right beside them with her husband. Talk about poetic justice. Sometimes the quietest revenge is just walking away stronger than before. If you love this story, don't forget to like, share, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Bye!